Hi everyone, I'm Celine from Blue Calla Patterns and welcome to the final video for the Lisianthus handbag. We're going to do the final assembly in this video. You're going to need your assembled exterior shell, your lining pieces that we just completed in the last video, and then your main zipper closure. So before we can do this final assembly, we have to do a lot of center marks. So what you're going to do first is you're going to fold your main zipper in half, and we want to mark the center on the zipper tape along both sides. Okay, hopefully you can see the white chalk. And what I also recommend that you do here is I recommend that you sew across the zipper coil at both ends of the zipper, just so that you don't accidentally pull off your pulls in the middle of assembly. So like this, I've gone ahead and just based it across the zipper ends. And now we need to also mark centers on our exterior and lining shell. So in order to do that, you're just going to fold each half of your lining, well, each of your lining pieces, I should say, on the side together, and then mark on the right side at the top, and then do the same for the other half. Okay, and then I'm going to use a regular pen, and we need to, I'm going to just flip this like this because that's how we're going to be attaching it. Same with this side, like this. And we need to mark the center on the edge of the exterior band piece, because that's where it's going to be attached to the zipper. So you don't have to fold the whole thing in half. I just fold this part. So I match up the seams here, and then straighten that out, and then mark that center right here. If my pen was marking, that'd be great. Oh, come on now. Okay, and then do the same for this one. Okay, so we can set this aside for just a minute, and you're going to need the lining shell. So one important thing, because these are attached, but when we're attaching to the zipper one lining piece at a time. And so we're just going to have to make sure that the other lining piece is out of the way. So it's going to mean pushing it out of the way here and there as we're doing our work. So you're going to take your main zipper closure and you want it right side facing up. I recommend for now just push the pulls, both of them, to one end like this. And then you line up that center mark on your zipper with the center mark at the top of the lining piece like this. So they are both right side facing up. Now, if you do find it a little bit difficult to do this, you can open the zipper and have a pull at each end as well. So just do whatever seems easiest to you. Okay, and now we're going to baste the zipper to that lining piece along the entire length, and you're just going to use 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, and it's just a quick basting stitch. Okay, so we now have the zipper attached to that first lining piece. Now you're going to need your exterior shell, and you're going to clip one of these edges to this outer edge of your lining piece. And you're going to start with that center mark being lined up with that center mark. So your exterior is right sides together with your zipper and lining piece. And you want this bottom corner to line up with the bottom corner of the lining piece, right like this. I'm just going to line up these bottom corners. And now we're going to clip everything in between. Okay, now we're going to sew through all of the layers all along this outer edge. We're going to use our regular stitch length and a seam allowance of 1/4 inch. Make sure that you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Now I do find it a little bit of a nicer zipper closure if you can do slightly larger than 1/4 inch seam allowance. So, as close as you can get to 3/8 is better. But do whatever your machine is capable of doing. A minimum of 1/4 inch though. Okay, so here we have all the layers sewn together, and I'm going to flip it this way And we are going to flip the lining so it is wrong sides together with the exterior. Pull out our side pocket here. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. I'm going to bring this lining piece like this, actually. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch the seam allowance here. And it's really important when we get to the accordion gussets that you top stitch them pressed flat against the lining in this way. Okay, so when you're top stitching, that has to be included in the top stitching, and it has to be top stitched away from the zipper. And it's going to be a little bit thicker in that area, so go slow in that area if you need to. So we're just going to top stitch all along the zipper. Okay, now this is how it looks from the lining side, nicely top stitched. So you have to go really slow and take your time here because, you know, you're making sure that your accordion gussets are placed correctly, and you're making sure that your side pocket lining pieces aren't getting sewn into this top stitching. So there's quite a few things to pay attention to, so you don't want to do this step very quickly. So now we're going to repeat all of these steps to attach the zipper to the other lining piece. And you're just repeating all of the steps that we've just made. Make sure that your zipper is not twisted. Looks good. So same steps, starting by basting the zipper on, and then sewing the exterior to the zipper and the lining pieces, and then flipping and top stitching. Now I do want the lining corners to be lined up at the same spot here, so it's easier if I close the zipper a bit and then pin it so that the corners are all lined up here. And then you'll be able to open up the zipper a little bit later. Okay, I'm doing the same on this side. Is this going to be easier to box the corners if all of these are lined up nicely? And also, you want to be able to actually box the corners correctly. So it is important to make sure that these are all lined up. Okay, so now I'm going to baste the zipper to the lining piece. Okay, and so here it gets a little bit annoying because we have all these layers here in the middle that are in the way. But we're doing exactly the same thing again and attaching the exterior to the other side of the zipper that is now basted to the lining. And again, we want to make sure that these corners are lined up. Okay, we're going back to sew this and trying to use at least 1/4 inch, if not a little bit more, for our seam allowance. Yeah, and just make sure that you're not catching the handles or anything that's inside the layers here that shouldn't be inside this seam. And now once again, we are going to flip this. Okay, so we're just flipping this again so that we can do our top stitching. And again, you're going to make sure that the accordion gusset is pushed away from the zipper before it's top stitched, and also make sure again that you're not top stitching the side pocket lining pieces when you get to this portion right here. Okay, so we have both halves here top stitched. Just going to close my side pockets. So make sure that your zipper pocket here is fully opened. What we're going to do before we box our corners is we are going to sew the bottom edges of the two lining pieces. In order to do that, we have to do some flipping. So if you've made the Baronia before, this is going to be somewhat familiar to you. Okay, so we're just clipping the bottom edges here of the two lining pieces, and then we're going to sew them together. Just use your regular seam allowance of 3/8 of an inch. Okay, so all the way across with 3/8 of an inch. Make sure that you backstitch at the beginning and the end. Okay, so the bottom edges of the lining are sewn together. And now we need to box our corners. So to do that, you have to close the zipper a bit. You have to get it at least, I would say at least 3 inches, but 4 to be safe, which can be a little bit tricky the way that this is. The layers are all separated right now. Okay, so just like that. And then to box, so we have to box the lining and the exterior at the same time. So the center of our zipper here, that's the center mark, where we're going to be lining up the center bottom seam for the lining pieces. Like this. So I open my seam allowance. And then the center mark on the bottom here of your exterior shell, that is the center mark there. And you want to align that to the center of the zipper coil as well. So this can be a little bit tricky because things are moving as you're trying to get these all lined up. But just take your time because lining up these centers here is probably the most important part if you want to get nice looking boxed corners. Now don't worry if the edges here don't meet perfectly. That won't matter when you've sewn these together. So as long as you're catching the edges in this seam, that's all you really need to be concerned about. To have them lined up perfectly is not really very important at this point. So I'm going to show you. So you're essentially flattening everything. And then you can have a look, make some adjustments if you need to. But what's really important is that the center here be lined up with the center of the zipper coil, and that this center as well is lined up with the center of the zipper coil. I'm going to try to include that. Okay, so that's really what's important. Now, when I sew across here, I'm going to sew twice with about 1/8 of an inch of space in between. Make sure, it's very important that you make sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end, and to also like to go over the coil section more than once because you might be exerting a little bit of pressure on the coil when you open the bag fully. So it's always a good idea to go back and forth here over the zipper coil area as well. So I'm going to go over to the machine now. So I'm going to sew once, 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to go within the seam allowance 1/8 of an inch away from that original seam, and I'm going to sew again, making sure to backstitch at the beginning and the end is very important. Okay, so that's what it looks like from the exterior side. This is what it looks like from the lining side. Now I do want to trim this, but remember that whenever you trim your zipper, you should always reheat seal the end. And then I'm also going to remove just a bit of the seam allowance here, not at the zipper. I don't want to weaken that area, but just the rest so that when I poke out the corners that they look nice. Okay, and now we're going to repeat exactly the same thing to box the other corner at the other end. So again, you want to close your zipper. So you want the pull to be on the inside of the seam we're going to be sewing here. Again, open up that seam allowance, line it up with the center of the zipper coil. And then flatten this, and again, lining up that center mark with the center of the zipper coil. Okay. All right, so I'm sewing across twice, exactly like we just did for the first corner here. Okay, the second corner is done. Trim the zipper, heat seal. And then just trim a bit of the seam allowance. Okay, and now we're going to turn the bag right side out through the opening at the bottom of the zipper pocket. So go slowly. Don't try to put too much through the hole at the same time, because sometimes what happens is you can tear the stitching in your zipper overlay. We don't want to do that. So I usually go slowly in this step. Okay, the bag is essentially finished. The only thing we have to do is sew the bottom of our zipper pocket shut. So you can do that either by hand or with your machine. I always do it with my machine because, as you know, I'm not a good hand sewer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and sew this shut all the way across. I just make sure to sew as close as I can to those bottom folded edges. got to click on the corners. There we go. Now, of course, when it's filled with items too, that helps it keep its shape. So that's the completed bag. It looks like it might be complicated to sew, but I find it actually pretty simple. Just a little bit awkward attaching the exterior and the lining to the zipper. But other than that, it's not super difficult to make. I hope you enjoyed the video and making the bag. If you enjoyed this sewing tutorial, please like my video and subscribe to my channel. Your support is much appreciated.